Hi there and welcome to this little park bench. My name is Kjetil, Lima Bravo for Foxtrot Hotel, and today I'm going to talk about this old venerable friend. It's my old G90. I bought this back in 2019 when it was brand new, April 2019, and at that time it was lovely to get. The first one I got had some production issues and blew up the first time I put power into it, but the second one has lasted me now for 6 years, and it's getting a bit worse for wear. This radio has been with me for literally hundreds of activations. I've done SOTA, POTA, Fluorofauna, bunkers, IOTA, I've done contests, I've done digimodes, I've done everything you can do within ham radio with this one, at least on the HF bands, and it's showing. It's getting a bit scuffed up. There's a few loose parts, like some screws have fallen off, and also this COM port is broken. That's my main issue with the radio. I can't flash firmware for it. To flush the firmware in the G90 you have to do it in two places. You have to do it in the rear and in the front. Rear one works perfectly, front one does not work, and I've done it before. The cable works, everything works except for this COM port that I know is broken. So I'm gonna see if there's anything obvious in here, if it's just corroded or dirty or something like that, and if I can repair it. Also, at the same time, I'm going to replace this horribly annoying Tamiya mini connector here and do a bit of a PowerPole mod on this one. I've done one mod of this before, and that was the Mars mod, which I'm going to share in the video here. It's a really simple mod. You just remove a small resistor and, well, you're done. And there's even a big arrow on how to do that. So I'm going to tear it down. I am going to clean up what I can clean. I'm going to see if I can fix the front COM port, which is the main issue. And I'm also, of course, then going to do the mods on this. So let's get in and find a workbench instead of this park bench. It's not a very good place to work on electronics. So I got everything rigged up here at the workbench. I got my camera up there. I'm gonna film mostly from that angle, and the radio is there, some tools. Let's get started. So tearing into this is pretty simple. It's there's a lot of screws around it. You don't have to remove all of them to do all of the things I'm gonna do here, but still I actually would like to remove everything just to as a matter of course. And these are mostly hex head, and of course I am selecting the wrong sizes. By the way, I do have a video where I walk through what's on this bench, at least what was on it at some point. I'll link it up there somewhere so you can have a look if you want to. Some people like to watch that kind of thing. So these side posts, they are loose on the bottom, and that's because I used to have some adjustable legs that were attached here, and when I took them off I also lost the screws for them, but they're standard M3 ones, and I have tons of them over here of different dimensions, so that should be doable to get some replacements even if they're not exactly the same. This is a 3D printed knob. I got it from another ham back in 2019 when I got the radio, and it's been on there since, and this is like been a lifesaver. There's some nicer options available now, so I think I'm gonna replace it and print a new one that actually just fits directly on here instead of being attached on the knob itself. These ones are loose, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lot of dirt and crud in here between here, so it's a good thing to get it off and get it cleaned off just to do that. And that should, if I'm not mistaken, actually release the header. So on the G90, if you haven't seen this before, it's a removable head unit. There's a DB9 connector that goes between them. So you also get a cable when you buy this radio, so that you can actually expand this and move this wherever you want. And there are plenty of stands you can print for these, so you can mount them in a car or like something like this on your desk. Handy little thing if you want to get this device out of your way. see, did that actually loosen up the lid, or do I have to take more screws off? Nope, that loosened up the lid. And inside of the lid here, you'll find that it doesn't go up further than this, and that's because there's a tiny little speaker here with a small Molex connector. So just to remove that, and the lid is off. And you can see also here quite a lot of crud on the inside of the lid. That's nice to get cleaned up. And let's see if I can find the spot where, yeah, that's where that small little component was that I had to take off to Mars mod this radio. There's one top board, and the connector I want to get to here is on the bottom board. That's the power connector. And on top here there's two wire connectors. There's one for TX and one for RX, and they're connected with those PCB mount connectors that you see in Wi-Fi adapters and so on. So I need to get that off on both of them. These you have to be pretty careful with. So I am going to use some more careful tools than I did last time, but pretty much they are, you just pry them off slowly with a screwdriver like that, and inside here there's a small, what looks like a coaxial connector, but it's actually not. So really simple thing to set up or take on and off. And this as well. And this one almost appears like it's been broken. You can see here there's a pretty bad kink in that one, which is not good, and this has never been off before. So that's interesting, and that's on the, is also, yeah, that's on the RX side. So I have to do some more checking on that one when I get back to reassembling this, just to make sure that it's not properly broken. So let's do so. Let's mark the long one with the tape as RX, just so I'm sure. So RX is the one with the tape, and I'll make a note of that. When I do disassemble things like this, I do prefer to just take photos. So I take photos on the phone, and it's very nice with regards to just finding the correct order of setting things back again, and so on. But I guess most people here have disassembled more than their fair share of things, and maybe even assembled a few of them afterwards. I do think that my assemble to disassemble ratio is still in favor of disassembling things compared to assembling them, but that probably applies to most people. So these ones, they have small discs on them as well. They should be pretty simple, just short stubby connectors. There's also one of these flat flex connectors here, and that keeps this board in. And I also think I have to take off the end, one of the ends here, to actually make this work, because this is not coming out by itself. Yeah, I have to take off one of the ends, so I'm not sure. I do think I want to take off the front because there's nothing attached there, so I'll do that. And I also have to give a big thanks to November Uniform 1 Uniform. He posted a video that showed this teardown, or at least parts of this, the PowerPole mod, in quite a good detail. So that's what I'm using to do here, or using to do the same thing here. So this is not a direct copy, since I'm going to do a bit more on the radio and cleaning and so on. But very helpful to have that video out there, and hopefully somebody will enjoy this as well. And I can see that pretty much whatever I take off here, it's kind of cruddy. It's got dust in it, or dirt in it, or sand in it from some beach I activated. So it's about time that this radio gets a good clean. And yeah, so that's the front panel off. And you can see inside the radio there's a two-board construction, top board and base board. They probably have some better names, but that's the ones. And let's see here, just pull this one up, yeah, tilt it up and pull it back, and then this board just slides out. So this is the top board. On the back here you see a few connectors. There's key, COM and IQ, so you have an IQ output for different, if you want to do a pen adapter or so on, key for Morse code, and COM for flashing and controlling. And the accessory port is for the CE19 interface, which, well, it's there if you want to do any kind of digital modes. You can also use a DE19. If you do have the CE19 board, it's comes as a bare board, but I've created this 3D printable case. You'll find it on Thingiverse, on Printables, and pretty much everywhere else you find free 3D files, and it's been pretty popular. It's really strange that they didn't make it. I've had this for, well, 6 years or whatever since I bought it, and it still fits really nicely in here. The baseboard here, it's a bit harder to remove. There are some power transistors which are screwed to the backplate. There's some thermal compound, and I think that's actually thermal glue that's between there. So this is not coming out easily unless you actually want to desolder things, which I really don't want to do. But it's good to just have a small visual inspection. And I can't see anything here that is actually broken. One thing that was broken on my old or previous Zyger radio, the X108 Golf, was this SO239 connector here, and the center pin of that had come loose because they had flexible coax in the on the inside, and that flexible coax came loose, so the center just rotated freely, and that of course broke after a while. So yeah, on this one it's pretty nice and solid. I can see that it's a bit dirty inside of the connector itself. You probably can't see it here. It's a bit black, and it also looks a bit worn, so I think I'm at least gonna go over this with some very light grit sandpaper and get it cleaned up a tiny bit there. In here, that's the inside of the offending connector. It's a Tamiya mini connector, and it's reversed as opposed to the normal Tamiya mini standard, which is used for small RC cars. This is a rather weak connector. It breaks a lot. I've had Zyger radios now which has used this for 8 years or something like that, and I've replaced maybe 10 or 15 of these connectors. They are really bad, to say it that way. And they're not always easy to get hold of either, but they're should be pretty easy to replace. I'm basically just gonna snip off this connector here and add some PowerPoles, and then I'm also gonna have to actually file out here and make this hole bigger so that I get space for the PowerPole connectors, which are quite a lot bigger. So the PowerPole is going to be something like this. It's not that much bigger, but it's enough that like it won't fit in the hole. It's good, I would say 5 millimeters or so bigger. So I have to file it out a bit. Luckily this backplate here is aluminium, so that shouldn't be a challenge. The only choice I have is, should I desolder the connector here, the SO239, should I desolder that first and remove the backplate, or should I just put it upside down, which November Uniform 1 Uniform recommended, and just make sure that you don't get anything in here. And I think I'm going for the latter option, a lot less work, and maybe also remove this this stand here, this copper stand, just to get some more workroom in there. I know there are drivers for this. I do not have one, so that would be a nice thing to get for my set, but I'm not buying it just for this little job here. And also this is very close to the edge here, so it had to be a very narrow thing to get in there. So that's this one loose, and the board should still sit in there pretty nicely, I think. A few side cutters. And these cables, they do not feel good. They actually feel kind of oily and greasy, and well, if they hadn't been soldered on, I think they're actually soldered through, so I would have to remove the board. If not, I would actually have replaced these cables as well. So, well, can't fix everything. So, how do I get this out? Does it go through or does it not? Or do I just break it off? Yeah, I just break it off. I have more of these in case I would like to put it back in, but well, that's not gonna happen. Even though I'm doing this upside down, I do want a bit more protection, so I'm gonna cover quite a lot of this with painter's tape just to keep a bit more of the mess out. And I'm also gonna ensure that these ones don't flap around in the breeze. Like so. Here. That should do those at least for now. And I probably don't have to cover really far in here, but at least some of the components would be nice to have covered. So that should cover literally part of that. So for these ones, they you press them in and they go in one specific length and they get stuck there. So I actually want it to go through a bit like so. And let's see if I can get that in focus up here. Basically they're supposed to go through so that the small hole you can poke something through gets out on the other side. So I need to make something that's roughly this size, and I need to enlarge this hole for that, and that should be doable. And a simple way that anyone you showed was basically to cut this out in tape and use that as a guide. So I'm gonna do that. And this is not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be a start at least, and after that I can fine adjust it. So of course it's the old rule: when you're machining, you measure once and you cut twice. Okay, so I have a bit of a guide here. So let's just make those lines completely straight. Again, this is just a rough template for what I would like to do. Okay, so that's one template done. And let's just make sure here. Yep, they fit quite well. So I'm gonna stay clear of the lines. So this is an outside template. The placement here doesn't really matter as long as the entire old hole is in there and that it's roughly gonna be straight with one of the edges, so the top edge here. There's clearance, and as you can see here, most of what I need to take out is actually on the left and right sides here. So I have to take off, I'd say, roughly 2 millimeters on each side here. So that should go quite quick. I think it should be aluminium. And of course, this file doesn't fit. It does fit when I get one side out. So really nice planning. So let's actually use the one in here. So this is really slow going, and so I should have bought a thinner file, but the only ones they had were the ones that were thicker, so they were square, and they would also not have fit into this hole. Another option would actually be to get the Dremel, but I don't want to do that with all of the electronics still in here. Then I would have to get all of those out. So when you have a lot of these metal filings around, they can be a bit hard to get off the table, and just a quick way of doing that is just by using tape. So just run it over like so, and like so, and that way you don't put any abrasion on your table, so you don't scratch the surface, and you get rid of quite a lot of small foil things on there. So that's at least one way of doing it if you want to do it. Of course, this is not a table I care about, it's my work table. That's getting really close on that side at least. And this file is barely not fitting in. So soon I'm gonna have the proper file working. So close. So that was considerably better when I got that running. Let's see how close I'm getting here. Because I'm going in with these ones going through. And it's still far off. Let's do some measurements here. And these together are 16.9 millimeters. So I have 0.6 of a millimeter left to go in either direction here in the width. So 16.3. It does advance, it just takes a bit of time, and I don't want to overshoot it either. So that's this, and it should be actually plenty of clearance there to get it in. So now I have to get thickness, which has to be, so it fits on one side I think. Yeah, but not on the other side. So let's do a bit of selective filing here. When you're working with tolerances like this, with pressure fits, a tiniest amount, like a tenth of a millimeter or thousandths of a millimeter, can actually make the difference. With plastic, it's not as critical, but if these were metal parts, this would be a completely, or both were metal parts, this would be a very different ballgame. So I did work a lot with machining before, with CNC machining, and yeah, did a lot of measurements and stuff for that, so it's fun to play around with this again. Yeah, so that's it. That's the tiniest little thing there. A few strokes of this one means that it's supposed to fit in. So that's nicely done, and from what I can see here, there's no metal shavings inside, so doing it upside down worked, but also nice to have this protection, of course. Like so. So my question to you now then would be, would you solder this on or would you crimp it on? For my end, I did get a crimping tool for this. It's a PowerPole crimping tool, and this has made things a lot easier for me, at least. And I also got a desoldering one. I got the normal crimper. Correct tools make things so much easier, even if you don't do too much, but there has to be a certain like minimal level of effort you put into it before it pays off. But for this one, it's so lovely. Okay. Do these. And I'm sure there are billions of videos out there showing you how to actually crimp this on correctly, so I'm not even gonna attempt to show you that, because I probably do it completely wrong. But pretty basic thing. You take this thing in here, and then you place it in the correct hole on the crimper, which is not very easy when you're left-handed. Another option here would be to solder it, and you can just solder it through this hole on the end here, and both of them are good. This is not going to have a lot of stress on it, so I don't think it's that critical, but it's good to know that there are options. And I have actually soldered some when I had the cable that was completely wrong diameter for this crimper. Okay. So I have two of these pull tests. They are really nice and strong. And let's see here. That is the correct direction. And yeah, let's put it in there. Okay. That one was not very interested in working properly. So as I said, these cables are not good. They just feel old. So I would have loved to replace them, but that's too much work for this. Okay. This one is not really happy. Let's recrimp here. This one does not want to stick in there. So let's see if it's this that's wrong. Yeah, So that was a bad plug actually on this one, so it simply didn't want to latch properly inside there. Never seen that before. So these ones go through like so. And they poke through just enough that you get a small hole through there, and that means that you can actually lock it in place. Yeah. So for now let's just use a normal cotter pin for this and get that through. And of course I need to remove this plastic part. The cotter pin is of course built for this, attaching stuff like this, so that is kind of helpful. And you can bend it all the way around here, and there's actually also a slot on the PowerPoles to accompany that. So I will tidy this up later, and for now I just need to get some sort of cable here so I can test that this works. Yep, and that works perfectly. So this is of course not the correct cable, and I'm not going to connect the battery until I get everything back on here. But for now I think I'm going to say that's a fix for this part. And that's really going to be nice to have a proper connector here instead of the other one. So let's just do some more tidying up around. So that should be it. And I think it's time to just start cleaning. And for that I'm going to use a simple magic eraser and just go over some of the surfaces and just use some normal garden variety soap, spray on soap to get it clean here. And of course I'm not going to have a lot of moisture on it, but a bit is okay. What I'm actually after is just getting rid of some of the gunk that's in here. I'm not going to of course go for a complete wash of this, but I would like to just get like some of the surfaces slightly cleaner before I reassemble it. That's of course to prevent corrosion, and yeah, it's always nicer to have clean equipment. Not sure if clean heat sinks are gonna do very much, but it helps. And as you can see, this is well and truly scratched up. It's been out and about quite a lot, and this has been on many surfaces. I think it actually looks rather nice to be that well used. I think that's going to be enough for the main body for now, at least. I got some other plans for it later. And these sharp edges they're tearing up this magic eraser. It's not really happy with that, but well, that's its problem. It doesn't take much to make this look nicer, but it's gonna take a bit more to make it look really nice, which I'm gonna show you later. This is the front panel. That's been isolated behind the head unit most of the time, so this has no visible dirt or grime on it. I don't think I've ever had this head off for more than like a few minutes indoors. And the top surface here, this is actually steel, and this is heavy. This is I wonder why they made this in steel instead of aluminium. Because the rest of the body here is clearly aluminium, and this has actually started rusting slightly. I'm not sure how easy that is to see there, but there's a tiny bit of surface rust on it, which is interesting. But of course this has been out in moist environments a lot. I've used it for activations in any kind of weather. So this is the edge where the head unit covers over, like so. So there's been room for some moisture to get trapped in there. So this is something I'm gonna have to actually get out some sandpaper and get cleaned down, but that's gonna be for the next step of this build. So yeah, and there's also a tiny bit of surface rust here on the other end as well. So this entire panel here, also rust here on the underside, and this has been in these grooves. So I'm gonna have to actually sand down all of this panel and get that cleaned up properly. I don't like have rust on my parts. So really wonder why they went for steel for this one. That's a strange decision. And also the head unit seems to be made of, yeah, this is steel as well. So there's some steel construction and some aluminium for the heat sinks. Interesting combination. And this, I'm gonna dig deeper into the head unit. I have to fix that serial port here as I talked about, or at least see if I can do that. So this is gonna have a complete teardown. And I can see that, yeah, this top part here has rusted here as well. So what I would like to do now is just assemble it for today and make sure that it still works with the new PowerPole connector, and then I can go on and do the rest of the things I would like to do. So first, this hole has to go back in. And yeah, the back panel here, there's a tiny bit of rust on that as well. So this back plate is also, either it's aluminium, so the rust has actually come over from the steel parts here and attacked the aluminium. So I have to sand down that as well to get it off. It's not a big issue, but it's something I don't want to have there. It's not going to do anything bad for the aluminium, but it will then go back to the steel again. And that's not something you want, is it? So let's see here. I placed this one. So let's get the screws back in and let's attach this properly. Just loosely first and then fine adjust afterwards. This is a pretty comfortable machine to work in. It's, well, if you want to work on some of these tiny components, it's not going to be fun, but for the big stuff like this, it's well built, well put together, and from what I can see, you could actually run this quite easily with the lid open, just flipping this out. So you could do some proper repairs on this machine, which you can say that about all new stuff nowadays. These ones had blue Loctite on them, I don't have any Loctite around, so I think this should probably be good enough. Also not going to tighten up too much, as I am gonna disassemble a lot of this again to do that cleanup of the rust in here at least. So if I just slide it on now, yep, that works. Just put a screw in on each side just to keep it in there as well. So it would be really nice by Zygo if they actually stuck to the same kind of screw here. Like they're the same thread, so sticking to either this or Torx or whatever would be just make it so much nicer when you're opening it, but I guess they had a reason for why they did this. Okay, let's see. Oh. So let's add a bit of a dummy load here. And put the radio up like so. And hopefully it does not go boom. It does not. That is positive. So let's just, for the fun of it, test. Let's set power down a bit. And yeah, made sense. So the radio survived this, and well, I had no thought it shouldn't, and I can now use PowerPoles. I gotta make a new cable for it, so I have a PowerPole to PowerPole cable for that. This is a PowerPole modded G90. If you buy a new one, of course, it comes with these, I think, for at least most of them. So, well, that's a good fix by Zygo to actually implement that on such an old radio design. But then again, fun to do some mods myself. I hope this was interesting. I am gonna do this in a two-parter. I'm gonna move over to fixing or looking at the head unit in the next episode. And then I'm gonna basically do some final cleanups, maybe in the third episode. I'll see how long it takes to look inside of the head here. Thank you very much for watching. 7-3.